The story kicks off with the awakening ceremony for the village children's job classes, and expectations for Errol are sky high. Since his mother is famed as one of the strongest swordswomen and his father is an archmage, so everyone figures he is bound to receive something pretty badass. Then his turn comes, the priest lays a hand on him, and instead of seeing a vision with a job title, his sight just floods with white from edge to edge. Suddenly the priest freezes on the spot because this almost never happens, and in cases like this, there's only one explanation. He finally declares that Errol, much like some useless kid with no future, is going to be permanently jobless. Classes are gifts handed down to people that let them focus on a role and unlock skills to grow stronger, so the outcome hits hard. His parents and sister had spent the whole morning hyping Errol up, convinced he'd end up with some top-tier class, so the moment they hear he's marked as jobless, the shock spreads through the hall. Even so, they still adore him, immediately scrapping their retirement plans and joking that Errol can freeload in the basement for the rest of his life, if that's what he wants. Errol says he has no desire to end up as some basement shut-in. People around him act like being classless dooms him to a bum's life, but he honestly doesn't see it as a big issue. Of course, getting a cool class that made him strong right away would have been nice, but he's already spent years training with his mother on the sword, and the fact she hasn't accidentally killed him with her insane strength has to mean he's improving, so he refuses to feel down. Even if it takes him more effort than others who rise faster, he's ready to keep pushing until he's on par with his parents. Errol's family are glad to see his optimism holding strong, so they cheer him on once more and say he's bound to be well known someday. Errol values their support, but training can't be delayed, so he makes his way to the fields alone. There, he hears the ring of steel nearby, so he goes to check and spots two children from the village in the middle of a duel to test out their new sword classes. Before long, one of the boys notices Errol watching from the corner over there, and they tell him he has no business here since this is not a place for a classless loser. Errol answers that there are no rules against him coming here to train, so he would prefer to practice in peace. Even so, the kids are intent on establishing dominance over Errol, so they say they will be nice and show him what a sword class bearer can do. The two of them start sparring again right in front of Errol, blades tapping and feet sliding, and he finds himself a little impressed. Their form is laughable at best, still it is fascinating to see how effective sword skills are when they kick in. The very first skill anyone with a sword class gets is called basic swordsmanship, and it lets you swing a sword decently well, even if you have never held one in your life, which clearly fits these two. He figures he might actually get useful practice if he goes up against them, so he steps in and says he would like a duel. The kids take offense at the idea that a classless guy thinks he can stand a chance, so they agree to the match. To ensure this, the first boy asks whether Errol has his divine protection, which in this world is a blessing everyone is born with. It wraps the body in a shield that can absorb a certain amount of damage. So Errol tells them he does have one, and the boys look relieved because that means they will not accidentally kill him during a duel. Right then, the first steps forward and charges at Errol, fully expecting to overwhelm him with the opening strike. Even so, Errol holds his ground better than expected. He keeps his guard tight and the angle clean, and the boy cannot spot a single weakness to exploit. He waves his friend over so they can jump Errol together, but Errol reads the setup and hops out of the line just in time. Anyway, he figures this is the perfect chance to test himself by taking on two guys at once, so he rushes straight at them. Within seconds, they're already down, and it turns out way easier than he expected. Any sane person would have just called it quits here, but the boys insist they haven't lost yet, saying that one didn't count. Right then, a red-haired kid shows up and tells the two to stop grumbling, because on a real battlefield, there are no second opportunities. Red hair has a reputation around here, so the boys do not argue. And as he walks up to Errol and says his skill with a sword is impressive for a classless bum. But still, the only reason he won was because those two were weaklings, so the redhead wants a fight to prove he is stronger. The boys tell Errol that Red Hair is the son of Captain Evans, the village's head guard, and Errol knows Evans since he used to come by their house to ask Errol's mom to help him hunt demons. As for the red-haired boy, he is doing this because he thinks his father is the greatest. Yet everyone else in the village says Errol's mom is stronger, which is true, and he cannot accept that. He wants it clear he is not lazy like those two over there. He awakened his sword skills a year ago and has not skipped a single day of training. He believes parents' skills are inherited by their children, so he is here to prove once and for all that his dad is the best by beating Errol. Errol calls him out on his crap, and even so he's always up for a challenge, so he accepts the duel. Soon after, the duel begins, and they start clashing blades at high speed. The other two boys watch from the side, astonished that Errol can keep up with an intermediate swordsman like Redhead. After a few minutes, Errol can tell Redhead is much stronger than the other two. but his anger keeps clouding the way he thinks. With one broad slash, Redhead is left wide open. Errol moves in, ready to take full advantage, closing the distance and aiming straight for Redhead's neck. Yet at the last moment, Redhead uses a skill to counter. Then Errol blocks the first strike, but the second sends him crashing into the wall. At that point, Redhead is stunned that Errol managed to block one of the slashes at such close range. He still took the hit in the end, so the win goes to Redhead. Errol asks for an explanation, and Redhead says the move he used is Twin Blade, an attack skill that lets him throw out 2 strikes in a single swing. The Red Boy admits Errol is far better than he expected, and says he respects that. Yet he insists someone who is classless would never be able to defend against a sword skill like that. Even so, Errol takes it as a personal challenge and vows to find a way to overcome it. A few days later, Errol's sister comes into his room to wake him, and mornings do not suit him at all. Right now, he's way too busy trying to get back to that dream that would probably ruin his reputation if anyone knew about it. So he just ignores her and goes back to sleep. Astaire then says she'll kiss him first and only after that tell everyone about the weird noises he was making in his sleep if he doesn't wake up. And that's enough to get him out of bed. They both head to the kitchen for breakfast, and Astaire keeps trying to kiss Errol, while their mom just laughs it off, even though it feels way too awkward since they're actually blood related. Once everyone finishes eating, Astaire asks whether Errol plans to go to his special training again today, and he confirms it. Still, she does not understand why he has been pushing so hard lately. She tells him he should take a break every now and then. Yet Errol has no plan to rest until he becomes the best. So as soon as breakfast ends, he goes out to continue his training. After that, Astaire starts to worry because he has been coming home late every day since he got beaten up at the training grounds. Still, Farah is sure Errol can take care of himself, so there is no need to fret. Then she takes Astaire out back and shows her a chest full of broken swords. From the way those blades are worn down, you can tell Errol is putting in real effort to get stronger. So they decide to let him work as hard as he wants to and stop holding him back. At the same time, out in the forest, Errol is testing his new move against a tree, convinced he has finally nailed it. He let Redhead hit him with the same strike countless times just to figure out the pattern, and after grinding on it for days, he can now unleash Twin Blade Slash whenever he wants. During this time, a goblin has been spying from the bushes, and even after seeing Errol swing, it still charges like an idiot. Errol reacts fast, cutting across its chest, and the creature drops before it even hits the ground. Right then, he hears a deeper growl in the woods, heavy and close, and just as he thinks of pulling back, a child's scream cuts through the forest. So he grits his teeth and charges in on his own. Before long, he finally reaches the place where he heard the scream, finding Redhead pinned against a tree by a hobgoblin. The boy is badly wounded, so Errol knows he has to step in, but he can't charge recklessly with the creature still a huge threat. He holds back and waits as the monster edges closer, and right when it's about to finish Redhead off, Errol spots his chance and cuts it down with a twin-bladed slash in one clean strike. With that settled, Redhead is still badly hurt, so Errol shares some of his standard issue holy water so he can recover. Then the kid thanks him, and with the niceties out of the way, demands to know how the hell Errol managed to do that, and points out in disbelief that Twin and Slash is a complex move that only comes off by using a skill, so Errol admits it is complex. Yet once he broke down the pattern and the timing, he could replicate it cleanly, and honestly, he should be thanking Redhead since throwing it at him over and over made the technique readable. Even so, Redhead refuses to accept it, and he is certain a skill-based strike must hit harder, so he asks Errol for another spar right here. Right then, the two square up, and just as expected, Errol matches Redhead's twin slash, then goes a step further and adds a third cut that catches Redhead off guard and knocks him off. It is called twin and slash for a reason, so it should cap at 2. Yet because Errol is not invoking a skill to perform the sequence, there is no real limit on how many slashes he can chain. From there, Redhead is floored by the realization that Errol is simply better, and Errol walks off so smug you would think he is about to join the Avengers. After a few days, Errol is having tea with his family, and Farah mentions that Evans's child has decided to head to Brescia, the city of swords, to train. Right then, Errol realizes he is probably the reason the Redhead suddenly chose to leave town for training, and the city of swords sounds tempting, so he starts considering making the trip as well. 5 full years roll by from that day, and Errol decides it's finally time to head out for Brescia, the kingdom famous for its elite swordsmanship. Both his mother and Captain Evans trained there, so Errol's goal is simple: reach their level and then go beyond it. On the road, he travels with a few strangers, 2 of them strong swordsmen who could hold their own anywhere. The man has the barbarian class, while the woman carries the dual-wielding class. They both want to polish their skills in Brescia too. Even so, they can't seem to get along, snapping at each other every few minutes. The cart driver tells them to chill since they're all bound for the same place. Yet the man's a cocky misogynist who says the woman should go back to scrubbing dishes. Before they can argue again, the driver yells for everyone to draw their swords because something's coming their way, and the sudden tension makes the two kids in the cart panic and beg the barbarian to save them. But that guy lives up to his lousy class. He's a cowardly bastard who says he won't risk his neck for anyone, then dives off the cart and bolts without hesitation. The woman runs after him, saying everyone's on their own out here. The cart driver starts sweating, wondering if he can outrun the horde with his passengers still on board. Then Errol hops down without saying a word and starts walking straight toward the monsters. The driver shouts for him to run while he still can, but Errol ignores it, rushing the first orc and stabbing it clean through the heart. The driver and the two kids freeze at his speed and precision as Errol uses instant transmission, flashing in and out, cutting orcs down one after another. Before long, he's surrounded on all sides, which means the dash skill won't work anymore. To the driver's disbelief, Errol pulls off a legendary move, the blade dance, spinning in a tight fury of slashes, mowing everything down at once. The driver can't figure out how Errol can use that skill, since it's supposed to belong only to swordsmen of the Sword Princess class, and those are always women. Right then, Errol charges straight at the orc leader, sidestepping its strike with crisp footwork before leaping onto the orc leader and driving his sword deep into the skull, ending it on the spot. He then heads back to the stunned driver and tells him to keep the trip to Brescia moving. When one of the kids asks what class he belongs to, he simply says he has no class at all, which leaves everyone shocked. He remembers 5 years earlier, when he showed his mother the new twin blade skill he had learned. She thought she was seeing things, but when Errol said he was training to replicate any skill he witnessed, she was overjoyed and promised to teach him every skill used by the Sword Princess class. Back in the present, the driver wakes him and says they have reached Brescia, the land of swords. Errol climbs down from the cart and sees the town center packed with people, swords strapped to their waists. Errol turns to the driver and asks whether he is an advanced level swordsman. At first, the driver claims he is just a cart driver, but Errol knows only skilled swordsmen can pick out those moves on the spot. The cart driver admits he is from the Holy Knight's class, which is a solid class, but he gets bored of constant fighting, so he sometimes kicks back and relaxes while posing as a normal driver. The Holy Knight figures this is probably Errol's first time in the city and tells him he needs to find a guild first, as without a guild he will not be allowed to fight in tournaments, and in this city, winning tourneys is the main way swordsmen prove their worth and earn money. Errol answers that he does not care about the money, he wants to face the strongest swordsman this place can offer. When the driver hears that, he warns him to be wary of toxic corporate guilds, since they can drain your soul, and not in a good way. With that, the driver turns back and leaves while Errol steps into the city. He looks around at people announcing their guilds, hiring hands, and swordsmen lining up to try their luck with the better guilds. On the way, he bumps into a blonde named Lilia, who instantly clings to him like a clingy octopus, saying she is with a famous guild and wants him to join. Errol grows wary right away, since she seems desperate for members, so he refuses. But Lilia keeps tailing him and pestering him to join their guild again and again, while Errol is not a pushover and keeps refusing. He asks her which guild is the strongest here, and she grudgingly says the Shadowblade Guild is one of the top right now since it has 8 classes of swordsmen. He asks for directions and moves straight toward that guild. On the way, a guard stops him and sends him to the reception for the test. At reception, he finds a long line of budding swordsmen trying their luck to enter the famous guild, which gets Errol excited as he wonders what kind of strong people he will have to face. When his turn comes to register, the receptionist laughs at him for being classless, saying only people with an advanced swordsman class can apply for the guild trials. Errol says he is sure he can pass their trial, but the receptionist still refuses to register him. Feeling down, he turns to leave and spots 3 ranked swordsmen entering the hall, treated like celebrities the moment they step in. He does not care about the show, and he turns to other guilds, yet one by one he gets rejected everywhere because he does not have a class. After that, he heads back into the city, taking out the letter his mother gave him and told him to find her old guild, since they will surely help him find something. He wonders if his mom knew he would run into this much trouble, and he stays thankful anyway. Before he can read the letter, Lilia latches onto him again, saying they are still ready to take him in, but Errol refuses again. She starts begging him to join the guild, telling him to do it as a charity, then points at a beautiful guild house and says it is her guild. This surprises Errol for a moment. Lilia says their guild, called Dragon Fang, used to be the best in the country for a very long time, but lately it has gone to crap, and right now they are the weakest. Even so, she wants to bring it back to its former glory. The name Dragon Fang clicks in his head as he remembers his mom once telling him about her guild's leader, a dual-wielding swordsman who chose the name Dragon Fang after his special move. He quickly pulls out the letter to check the name, and sure enough it is the guild his mom was talking about. He decides to go in with her, which makes her very happy, but the moment they step inside he finds an old drunk man with only one arm slumped on the couch. The man tells Errol to head somewhere else since this guild is doomed and walks off. While Lilia explains he is her father, once the second best swordsman in the city, yet after losing his arm he has not been the same. Errol however surprises her by saying he wants to join the guild, and this makes Lilia really happy, and she quickly drafts an agreement. Errol fills it out and hands it back to her. She reads it and then asks why he left the class column blank. Errol replies that it is because he has no class. Suddenly, Lilia snaps and draws a sword, claiming she thought he might be an advanced class swordsman since he was acting so hard to get. But before she can say more, the door opens and a red-haired beauty named Rhiannon walks in. Lilia runs to her at once, crying that this classless idiot tricked her into joining the guild. This grabs Rhiannon's attention, and she looks toward Errol, saying she never expected to see him here. Errol is confused and asks how she knows him, and Rhiannon looks surprised, saying they came from the same village and trained together. That still does not ring a bell. Yet at last he realizes the red-haired boy he fought so many times before was not a boy at all but a girl. Lillian knows the tale as well and asks Rhiannon if this is the classless guy who beat her when she was young. She always figured the story was a myth. Even so, Rhiannon is still stuck on that loss and challenges Errol to a match on the spot. The fight begins and Rhiannon fires off the twin slash attack, which Errol thinks he can counter without much trouble. To his surprise, Rhiannon's slashes burst through his own and hammer him straight in the chest. That throws him off for a moment, yet Rhiannon reveals she has the power swordsman class, which is why she can wield a sword 5 times heavier than a normal sword, which means she brings 5 times the force with every strike she throws. Errol is impressed that she has kept her speed even with the heavier blade. Still, that speed is nothing next to his own speed. Next time she attacks, he creates an afterimage of himself, distracting Rhiannon while he appears behind her and hits her in the back. Rhiannon is rattled and tries again, but the result stays the same. She cannot believe Errol is using a technique reserved for the most advanced level swordsman. At the same time, Errol realizes she is too tanky to drop with his normal attacks, no matter how clean the hits look. While Lilia watches in shock, Rhiannon knows it too and tries to finish the duel with heavy blows. But Errol uses his mother's signature counter, slamming Rhiannon to the ground and ending the fight right away. With that, Lilia's attitude flips completely, and she welcomes him to their guild once again. Then tells him their guild is buried under crippling debt right now, and to climb out of debt, they will have to enter the tournaments and fight as a 3-man group against other guilds that will bring all 5 members to each match. Even so, Errol is excited by the chance to face strong opponents, and he looks forward to the opportunity to hone his skills even more. The following morning, Errol wakes up and meets Rhiannon and Lilia to go over the next step for the guild. Now that everyone is here, Lilia says that since Dragon Fang has finally gathered 3 members, they have enough people to enter the team battle, so they will sign up for the guild competition this weekend. She explains the tournament runs in one-on-one elimination rounds, and each team is capped at a maximum of 5 members. Rhiannon feels a bit uneasy since they will be going in with only 3 members, but Lilia assures her it should not be too hard because she and Rhiannon are both B rank, so as long as they do not get matched against an A ranker, they should be fine. This is the first time Errol hears about this ranking system, so Lilia gives him a quick rundown and says there are a total of 4 ranks that outline the strength of an individual swordsman. Out of the 500 swordsmen in Brescia, there are only around 20 who count as A rank. While Rhiannon and Lilia land in B rank, Errol is not ranked yet, but since he managed to beat Rhiannon, Lilia figures he must be at least B rank as well. As long as the match placements don't screw them over, they've got a real shot at coming out on top. Speaking of that, the match brackets should be posted on the Colosseum notice board by now, so Lilia says she is going to check them right away. In the meantime, Rhiannon has Errol go put in some training until Lilia gets back. But before she can leave, Errol calls her back because he has a favor to ask. To start, since she's a power bladesman, he asks if she's got any abilities other than plain brute strength. And she says she's got one called Guts that basically lets her divine protection last longer than normal. Errol thinks it through and concludes the Guts skill would be an incredible asset for him in battle. So he steps up to Rhiannon and asks her to hit him over and over. Rhiannon starts blushing and asks if they can try something a little more normal since she thinks Errol is asking to do something indecent. but he says she is misunderstanding him, because the reason he wants her to hit him is that he assumes the gut skill is an ability that raises endurance. So the best way for him to reproduce it would be learning to take hits without relying on his divine protection. Rhaenyra is stunned when she hears Errol's plan and calls him crazy, because everyone knows skills are blessings from the goddess that depend on your class. Still, Errol reminds her she's already watched him pull off the twin blade and shadow skills, so there's no reason he couldn't copy the guts skill too. After that, in the training yard, he asks her to hand over her sword for a moment, and she agrees to give it to him, even if she has no clue what he's planning, since the weapon was custom made to be 5 times heavier than a regular sword, meaning there's no way he could wield it without the brute strength skill. Even so, Errol proves her wrong by drawing the blade with ease and swinging it around. She then asks how he manages that, so he explains that while the brute strength skill boosts you beyond normal, but steady training does too, and Errol has been putting in the work for years. Rhaenyra concedes she was off the mark and agrees to help with his training, but she warns that if he wants her to hit him, she will not hold back, and she does not want to hear complaints afterward. A few minutes later, Lilia rushes in with bad news. She just checked their tournament bracket, and of all the teams they could have faced, the organizers matched them with the Black Blade Guild, and those folks have 8 A rankers on the roster. Even so, Lilia says she is still confident she and the others can come out on top. Now that she's done talking, she notices Errol with his head buried in the ground and his butt up in a ridiculous pose. Rhaenyra explains he is the one who asked for this, and despite the heavy bruises, Errol does not seem bothered, so he gets up and asks what is for lunch. The day of the guild competition finally arrives, and once the group reaches the arena for their match, they overhear a pair nearby saying Dragon Fang drew Black Blade and ran into bad luck. They remember Dragon Fang used to stand among the top guilds, but they will not risk their money on underdogs, so they are putting everything on Black Blade. Lilia is offended that those guys think Dragon Fang will lose, so she starts marching over to set them straight, but Rhaenyra holds her back because it is not worth the trouble. Errol does not care whether people believe they will win, but he is surprised to learn gambling is allowed here. Rhaenyra explains that all Colosseum matches can be bet on, and as it stands the odds on their match are 20-1. Lilia is angry because that means no one expects them to win, but she says this could be a chance to make even more money. If they do not win, their guild is doomed either way, so she decides to take another loan, using her building as collateral so she can bet on their match, and Errol now gets how the guild fell into so much debt in the first place. Right then, Lilia hears a man laughing behind her, so she turns to see who it is, and to her annoyance she finds Jorg, the guildmaster of Black Blade, standing there smug as hell. Lilia asks him what he wants, and Jorg says he is just here to wish them luck, since he hates seeing how his former rival guild has fallen on rough times. He adds that he even heard they were desperate enough to accept a classless loser as a member. Lilia tells him that it is none of his business, and Jorg replies that he went through a lot of trouble to make sure their guilds would face each other in the tournament. So of course he wants to know who Dragon Fang has on its roster. Lilia snaps that it's none of his damn business, and Jorg fires back that he went out of his way to make sure their guilds would clash in the tournament. So naturally, he's curious to see who Dragon Fang's got on their lineup. That is only if they manage to pull off a miraculous victory against Black Blade's A rankers. A little while later, it is time for the day's main event, so Errol and the others walk into the arena and check the list of Black Blade's combatants. Errol is surprised the guildmaster did not enter, given how personally invested he seemed in crushing them in this match. He wonders if Jorg might be going easy on them, but Lilia and Rhaenyra point out that Black Blade's lineup is stacked with their strongest A rankers, so this is going to be an insanely tough fight. Hearing that, Errol gets fired up since it means he will get to see a lot of new skills, and Lilia reminds him the fate of Dragon Fang hangs in the balance here, so he needs to take this seriously. Once the match officially begins, the announcer introduces Black Blade's first fighter, the fencer Gio, and when she moves to announce Dragon Fang's combatant, she pauses for a second because the roster says she is supposed to introduce someone named Errol who is classless, which she thinks cannot be right. The crowd starts murmuring among themselves because they cannot believe a classless nobody actually decided to enter the tournament, and Gio takes it as a personal insult that he has to face a weakling like Errol. As soon as the fight starts, Gio fires off Blink Dash to close the gap and stab Errol through the chest, and to his shock that target turns out to be an afterimage created by Errol's shadow skill. He is not sure how a classless fighter can use a move like that, yet he adjusts quickly and begins working out a plan to deal with the afterimages. He ends up making a fatal mistake, thinking Errol can only create 3 afterimages, and once he cuts down the third, he drops his guard for a split second, careless at the worst possible time, giving the real Errol the perfect moment to rush in and finish the fight. Gio drops to the floor unconscious, and the arena erupts at the sudden swing in momentum. Lilia and Rhaenyra both trusted Errol to win, yet Rhaenyra never thought it would be this easy, and the crowd looks just as stunned. Errol, on the other hand, is bothered that he could not parse how Gio's thrust skill functions during the fight, so he decides he will study it later. After that, Errol's next bout is against a dual swordsman. As the boy rushes in, Errol cleanly parries the first strike and answers with a twin blade slash that flips him off his feet in one fluid motion, securing another win. His third opponent is a barbarian, and since Errol has only faced swordsmen so far, the barbarian tries to catch him out with a kick. He is nowhere near quick enough to surprise Errol, so Errol uses Blink Dash to slip behind him and cuts across his neck to end the round. Rhaenyra can hardly believe Errol just removed the third A-rank fighter by himself, while Lilia is thrilled because if fortune holds, Errol might run the board and take all 5 on his own. Rhaenyra tells Lilia it sounds as if she does not want to fight in the tourney at all, and it sounds that way because it is true. She knows damn well that in Errol's position, she would have fallen in under a minute. There is no way she could manage a head-to-head with an A-ranker, which is why she is pouring everything into cheering for Errol as if her life depended on it. In Errol's next match, he faces a shield bearer, and breaking through the man's guard proves tricky, though Errol is still outpacing him. After that, the shield bearer gets angry and accuses Errol of lying about being classless, saying there is no chance someone without a class could have blown through the last 3 that easily. Errol answers that his wins come from pure effort, and the shield bearer laughs, claiming that effort can never beat the power of classes. Still, Errol points out that if that were true, the man would not be getting his butt handed to him by a teenager. The shield bearer charges and tries a shield bash to knock Errol over, but Errol reads it, counters with a kick, and knocks the shield clean out of his grip. The shield bearer panics, saying he recognizes that kick, and Errol tells him it is likely because he copied it from the barbarian in the previous round, although he has not perfected it yet. While talking, he resets his stance and drives another kick into the shield bearer's side. The man cannot believe what is happening, insisting there is no way Errol should be able to pick up such a skill so casually. Errol admits that some techniques take real time and effort to perfect, but the easy ones he can copy after seeing them just once. So to back it up, he picks up the fallen shield and knocks the shield bearer out cold using his own move. That marks his 4th win, and even though Errol's strength is obvious, the crowd begins doubting that he is truly classless. They claim he is faking it and start shouting for a disqualification. Because of the uproar, the organizers contact the Guild Association and request a copy of Errol's original class assessment. The announcer asks if he is fine with sharing his personal info with the crowd, and he says he does not mind if it settles them down. She then projects Errol's assessment card for all to see, and clear as day it reads classless, so everyone finally accepts that he is not pretending. Lilia laughs and says if she had known Errol was this strong, she would have pawned more of her dad's treasures to place an even bigger bet. Rhaenyra worries about Lilia's gambling habit, yet she admits Errol's power is far beyond what she imagined. The final Black Blade fighter steps onto the stage, and Errol can tell at once this opponent is a cut above the rest, so he braces. Masamune is impressed that Errol senses the danger and keeps his distance, since his plan was to lure him in and end it instantly with an ultimate move. As soon as Errol hears ultimate move, he decides the risk is worth it and steps straight into Masamune's range. The moment he is close enough, Masamune draws his sword and unleashes a lightning-fast strike. For a split second, it looks like Errol's neck has been cut, but in the next moment he disappears. Masamune freezes in shock, trying to grasp what just happened, when Errol suddenly appears behind him and says that while Masamune is fast, he was trained by someone even faster, so his reflexes are on a whole different level. Errol then unleashes the ultimate technique he learned from his mother, the Piercing Tempest, and the strike hits Masamune head-on, knocking him out cold and making Errol the clear winner. Still unable to process what just happened, Rhaenyra and Lilia hug each other, realizing they won without lifting a finger. As Errol walks off stage, Lilia jumps in for a hug, and he instinctively sidesteps since Astaire used to pull the same weird stunt all the time. Then he sees Rhaenyra standing there with her arms open, ready for a hug, and she suddenly realizes what she's doing, her face flushing as she apologizes for getting carried away. Errol grins and says he would not have minded a hug, though he wishes she had taken off her armor first so there would be some actual comfort. Meanwhile, from the stands, Jorg watches Errol and the others celebrating their victory and vows to make him pay for this humiliating defeat. That evening, as they got back to the guild house, the place turned lively fast with drinks passed around, and Errol stayed stunned that Lilia was even old enough to drink, while she calmly said she was a grown woman. Even if she looks a bit small, she still cannot wrap her head around Errol dropping 5 ranked swordsmen from the country's top guild all by himself. From there, she decides she should court him because he feels like a way out of poverty and obscurity for her, and she goes straight to asking for his hand, saying she can satisfy every dirty desire he keeps hidden. Yet Errol holds that true Sigma attitude and turns her down on the spot, adding that he would rather be with someone closer to Rhaenyra instead. Right then Rhaenyra flushes bright red and pushes up from her seat, telling Errol to stop talking that way just because he wants to brush Lilia off. Still, Errol was genuinely weighing it and not just tossing words around, asks why she thinks he is making fun of her, and she answers that when they were kids he called her a man during their sword fight. Then she claims everyone who has met her says she has no womanly charms, while Errol glances down and sees 2 very full tanks right there in front of him and disagrees without holding back. Lilia realizes Rhaenyra has no idea what her biggest strength is or how to play it to her advantage. So at that point Lilia decides there is nothing to fear from her and she can stay focused on her own plan. With that, she slides a hand to Errol's legs, saying he must be worn out from all that fighting, then tells him to meet her in the bedroom so she can take care of his 3rd leg as well in a way that will help him relax. Rhaenyra gets flustered immediately and tells Lilia to stop with the weird talk. Yet Lilia gives a small smile and says she only plans to give him a well-earned massage after such a heavy day, and she keeps her gaze locked on Errol while she says it. But to her surprise, Errol answers with sudden eagerness that he would prefer a massage from Rhaenyra, and his version of a massage means getting pounded into the ground by Rhaenyra out on the training yard, while he drills reinforcement magic that she wields so effortlessly through her training. So he asks her to go hard so he can learn the rhythm of it. Lilia watches from the balcony and wonders whether Errol even understands what a massage actually is. Before long, the non-stop racket wakes Lilia's father, who staggers down to the training ground totally hungover and grumbling about the noise, saying they don't need to vent their frustration over losing the tournament, since that's exactly what he'd expect from a bunch of useless guild rejects. That moment Lilia tells him they actually won their match, and not just any match, it was against the current top guild in the country. Her words snap him out of it, though he mutters that Black Blade probably sent rank B or C newcomers as fodder. Yet Lilia hits him with another shock when she says every opponent was a rank, and Errol took all of them down by himself. That clears the fog from her dad's hangover as he stares at Errol, beat up and bandaged, trying to process whether this kid is really that strong. Lilia adds that she placed a stack of bets, and since Errol completely crushed his 5A rank opponents, she hit the jackpot. So now they are not only out of debt, they even have enough coin to cover operations for a while. Even so, her dad stays grim and says that if by some stroke of luck this kid is truly that strong, the bigger and richer guilds will swoop in and poach him, so she should keep her hopes low. Lilia says boldly that he can relax because she is going to marry Errol soon, which would bind them for life and keep him right here with their family. Errol answers that he is not doing anything like that. Then he turns to her father and says Lilia might be a little unhinged at times, but at least she's not the kind of loser who gives up on everything. That barb lands hard as her dad fixes him with a dangerous look. Errol misses the warning and keeps going, saying he should quit moping and start acting his age since he still has one good hand and can carry a sword in that hand. That flips a switch in her dad, who grabs Errol by the collar and tells him to stay away from matters he knows nothing about. Then he growls that a dual-wielding swordsman who cannot dual-wield is a waste of oxygen. Errol fires back that he disagrees because he is a classless swordsman who is still competing and pushing to climb in this world. From there, her dad shoves him away and trudges upstairs without another word. Lilia and Rhaenyra rush to Errol at once and ask if he is alright. Then Lilia apologizes for her father's outburst while thanking Errol for speaking up. Errol says that even missing an arm and being out of the game for so long, her dad is still unbelievably strong, and it is a damn waste that he refuses to use that strength and the experience he earned over years of fighting. He turns the thought over in his head, thinking about all the slick skills he could learn from a dual-wielding master, and he promises he will fire up Lilia's father and push him to pick up the sword again. Lilia hears that hunger to learn new techniques and suggests he start running some of the dungeons near the city. Right then, Errol admits he knows nothing about dungeons, so Rhaenyra spells it out, saying dungeons are underground cave networks where monsters spawn by the hundreds and the corridors are packed with traps. From there, she adds that it is one of the best places to learn new skills and level up through real combat, which will help them when the Sword God Cup rolls around. Errol still looks lost, so she explains that the city hosts a yearly tournament where the nation's top swordsmen compete to prove who stands as the best in the country. Right then, Lilia pulls out a form and tells Errol to fill it if he wants in. But to Rhaenyra's horror, he tears the paper in front of them, Rhaenyra, confused, asks if that means he doesn't want to join the contest, but Errol replies that Lilia tried to trick him and slipped him a marriage certificate instead. Lilia laughs and says she was just testing the waters, and Errol stops playing nice, locking her in a pro wrestling hold and clamping her neck under his arm like John Cena in the ring. The next morning, Errol wakes up to find Lilia trying to assault him, so he smushes her head with his hand, ties her to the bed, and calls her a clingy maniac as he walks out. The next morning, they head together toward the dungeon entrance. Lilia explains that everyone must stand in the teleportation circles to reach the floor they want, but you can only go to floors you've already visited. Hearing that, Errol gets curious and asks how far they've gone so far. Lilia says she reached floor 12, while Rhaenyra has made it to 14, and Errol instantly decides to go with Rhaenyra to the 14th. Still, Lilia tells him it doesn't work that way, and that he must physically reach a floor once before he can teleport there again. That kills the mood, since Errol wanted to fight the strongest monsters right away. Even so, Lilia tells him not to worry because she knows a short route that will take them to the lower levels fast. After that, they agree to the plan, but Lilia tries to get Errol alone, saying Rhaenyra can continue her floor 14 run since Errol doesn't need two guides. She starts dragging him off, yet Errol isn't that easy to manipulate and asks Rhaenyra to come with them. With that, they step onto the first floor and are attacked immediately by two knights in armor. Errol draws out his sword and clashes with one while Rhaenyra faces the other head-on. He quickly notices that even in heavy armor, the knight moves with surprising agility, but it's nothing he can't handle. So he uses his dash step and slices the knight's head clean off, and as the helmet falls, he realizes the armor is empty, powered only by the dungeon's mana. The knight rises again without a head, and Rhaenyra says these things have no real weak spot and feel no pain. So Errol changes tactics and goes for the legs, and that decision pays off as the magic knight collapses hard onto the ground. At that moment, Rhaenyra warns them that the enemies will regenerate soon, so they need to keep moving. Before they push deeper, Errol asks Lilia what her class is. She proudly says she's a fencer, flashing a smug little smile, and promises to teach him anything he wants in the training ground or in bed if he's willing to learn fast. Errol turns her down again and strides forward. Before they reach the second level, they hear cries for help echoing from a nearby door. When they get closer, they find a man drenched in blood, kneeling on the ground and begging for help. Rhaenyra suggests carrying him to the surface, but the man refuses, claiming his friends are still inside and got caught in a deadly trap. He pleads for them to rescue his group, but Lilia immediately shifts into business mode and asks for payment in return for any help. But the man is surprised by her request and pays a hefty sum from the money he earned shameless gambling. Still, Errol feels something off. While walking behind him, he notices that with that much blood loss, a man shouldn't even be able to sit upright, let alone walk all the way back to a dangerous area. So Errol realizes the blood and injuries are completely fake, but decides to keep that to himself, thinking it might lead to something interesting, or at least fun to watch. The man leads them to a hidden chamber where a trail of blood spirals toward a puddle in the center with a single gold coin lying inside. The moment Lilia reaches out to grab it, a teleportation circle flares under their feet with a bright flash. Rhaenyra immediately recognizes the trap, while the man grins and says he was paid well for such an easy job. Gripped by fear, he freezes as the magic circle suddenly catches him too, teleporting him alongside the others. They land on a floor even Rhaenyra has never seen before, meaning it lies below the 14th, though there are still no signs of enemies. The fake victim starts trembling and stammers that this is supposed to be the lowest floor of the dungeon, where the advanced sword god is said to dwell. Suddenly, a knight in rainbow enchanted armor steps forward. At that moment, Lilia refuses to believe the story about a sword god class that most people consider a mocking legend. Errol, however, instantly senses the danger and shoves Lilia out of the way as the sword god unleashes an aerial slash so powerful it splits the dungeon walls. Without wasting time, the sword god rushes Errol, and he barely gets his sword up in time to block the blow. He's thrown into the wall, but realizes he's only still standing because of Rhaenyra's brutal training that toughened him up by beating the crap out of him in the yard. Just then, he slashes back at his opponent. Yet the knight is insanely fast and uses advanced footwork to dash away. From there, Errol actually smiles, claiming this is the perfect chance to test himself for real. His party reels at that. Still, he snaps into the same divine step technique to close the gap and keep up the pressure, unleashing a flurry of strikes that the armored foe manages to block clean. The knight gives ground but activates a skill that spikes the gravity across the chamber, pinning the others to the floor. Yet Errol stands firm, remembering the time he trained with his mom and had to give it everything just to stay on his feet. Back then, when his mother went on the offensive, he couldn't respond at all. But this time it's different, as Errol uses the gold coin to nullify the attack. opening a narrow gap and charging through with all his power. He unleashes one of his strongest techniques, called Infinite Break, and the night bursts apart under the strike, leaving everyone in the room stunned. Then Errol drinks a bit of holy water to steady himself, and from there, the group safely exits through the teleportation spell. Meanwhile, back at the bar, Rod is back to drinking when he overhears 3 young idiots bragging about tricking the new members of the Dragon Fang Guild into a trap, saying those poor fools probably won't be coming back. Rod walks over and smashes their table with a single punch, demanding they spill everything they know. But Jorg cuts in and calls him a good-for-nothing drunkard, wearing that smug grin that makes your blood boil. Rod instantly realizes Jorg set the whole thing up, which means the odds of his daughter surviving are close to 0. He lunges at Jorg, but gets shoved aside, beaten and hopeless, kneeling there wishing he could save his little girl. A sudden voice from the doorway grabs his attention, and he turns to see Lilia, Errol, and Rhiannon walking into the tavern, talking about how hungry they are after the run. Lilia spots her dad and the ugly Jorg at the same time, then freezes as Rod rushes forward, hugging her tight and thanking God that his daughter is safe. Meanwhile, Lilia immediately calls Jorg out, saying they squeezed every detail from his crony, who confessed it was Jorg's plan from start to finish. As expected, he shamelessly denies everything, saying everyone is responsible for their own safety in the dungeons. After that, Rod tells Jorg he won't get away with this, but Jorg just laughs and calls him a booze-soaked loser before strolling out. After that, as soon as he gets home, Jorg starts trashing his room in rage, unable to believe that a kid like Errol has surpassed him. Then a sword resting on the stand starts to speak, promising to help him achieve his goal if he sets it free. The next morning, Lilia and Rhiannon were sitting in a lounge, and Lilia looked genuinely anxious because the preliminary pairings for the tournament had gone up. She had just learned she would be matched against Errol, so in her head, the path to the finals already looked closed. At that point, Errol told her not to take it too hard, since at her current skill level, the odds of winning the whole thing were already pretty thin. And even so, that kind of honesty did nothing to lift her mood. But fortunately for Rhiannon, she was placed in a different section from Errol in the preliminaries. Still, she would have to cut through a pile of strong opponents, so she needed to bring her best if she wanted to clear the early rounds this year. Lilia also intended to give it everything, even knowing there was no chance she could beat Errol. So she said she was heading back into the dungeon to train again today. Just then, she asked Errol to come along since she wanted him there as protection if something went wrong. But he honestly did not feel like diving a dungeon again. Just then, Rod stepped out to see what the commotion was. After hearing that Lilia planned to enter the dungeon again, he warned her to be extra careful because there was no telling when Jorg might lay another trap, and he said he could not bear to lose her. Lilia could see her father was truly worried, so she assured him she would keep her guard up at all times, and hearing that came as a huge relief. Errol was taken aback by Rod's sudden change in attitude. After nearly losing his daughter to Jorg's cruelty, Rod had realized he could not remain a weakling just because he lost an arm, so he had decided to begin training again. Sometime later, the day of the Sword God Cup preliminaries finally arrived, and a huge crowd gathered to watch all the swordsmen and swordswomen square off. Lilia ended up dropping her first match to a big random guy despite all the practice. She felt damn upset about it. So Errol tried to comfort her by saying the result had been inevitable, so there was no need to beat herself up. But even then, that did not make her feel any better. Errol had won all of his fights up to that point, so the next fight for this bracket would be the finals. And while Lilia knew exactly how strong he was, she warned him to keep his guard high because the woman he would face carried a lot of unusual skills. Errol wonders what Lilia means by unique skills since he figured he had already seen just about every trick the dungeon could throw at him. Even so, Lilia explains that up to now Errol has only gone up against pure swordsmanship skills. That woman is a magic swordsman, which means she can weave spells into the blade and fight while her weapon stays enchanted. Errol is surprised there are no rules against using magic in a tournament meant for swordplay. Still, it does not bother him in the slightest. He walks onto the stage, and the first thing the girl says is that being a magic swordsman is fully allowed by the tournament. So she does not want to hear any excuses about magic being against the rules after she wins. Errol says he is always ready for a good challenge. The match starts and the girl immediately starts spamming fireballs, forcing Errol to keep hopping around the ring to evade everything she throws. He tries to blitz and so he can strike up close, but she parries hard and instantly pops a fireball to shove him back. By this point, Errol has a solid read on what the girl can do, and he admits it must be convenient to threaten both long and short ranges that way. Even so, he adds that her overall level sits mid-tier, because she has not truly mastered either magic or swordsmanship. The girl bristles and says Errol will not be talking that way once she uses her ultimate technique on him. Then she channels magic and cloaks her sword in fire, and the crowd perks up because it is a rare sight. She starts throwing waves of flame at Errol, and he is genuinely impressed because the wild snaking motion makes it hard to read where the next strike is coming from. So he tells her it will be a spectacular skill once she truly masters it. But for the moment it is basic enough that he barely needs to move to flick the flames aside. If the girl's swordplay were even on Lilia's level, then the flaming blade might have given him real trouble. Instead, she came banking on raw firepower to bulldoze the bracket, so it will not take much to beat her cleanly. The girl boils over with rage, to the point her hair looks red, and she yells there is no way a classless loser could ever beat her. In the next moment, Errol uses twin blades slash to snuff the fire on her sword, then dashes straight in and knocks her out. With that, Errol is declared the winner of this prelims section. Even as the cheers roll around the arena, the only thing on his mind is whether there is special training he can run so he can learn to use magic as well and fold it into his style. A few days later, Lilia shakes her dad awake from a nap and tells him it is time for Errol's match in the Sword God Cup. But Rod says he is not going. Lilia starts tugging on his big arm and begs him to get up because their guild already has registered seats. Still, he absolutely refuses to attend the tournament. Lilia then asks if he is worried he might run into Jorg there, yet he says that is not the reason. He explains that a few days ago he started training again, and it made him realize how rusty he has gotten. It might even be a challenge for him to win the Sword God tournament in his current condition. Hearing her dad talk about winning the whole thing, as if it were the bare minimum, really pisses Lilia off because she could not even qualify for it. She tells him he is coming to the arena today, whether he approves or not, and drags him off the couch so he can get dressed. Once Rod is ready, he and Lilia head toward the arena. And as much as he kept fussing about not wanting to go the tournament, Lilia knows he would have gone to watch in secret anyway, since he never misses a chance to see his guild members perform well, and Rod cannot deny that. At the same time, over in the arena, Rhiannon fidgets in her seat because she is truly nervous about her match. Errol eventually shows up and asks if something is wrong since he has never seen her this anxious before. Rhiannon says she cannot help it because this is the biggest hermit in the city, and to make matters worse, she will not learn who her opponent is until the start of her match. So there is no telling what kind of fighter she will be up against. Right then, the announcer tells everyone that the first match of the day will be between last year's winner Jorg, the Sword Emperor, and the classless Errol. Errol is surprised he will be fighting Jorg first. Still, he is always ready for a good fight, so he heads out to confront Jorg. Meanwhile, as Jorg steps into the arena, everyone is shocked to see he somehow found a way to make himself even uglier than before. Errol can feel evil energy rolling off him. Rod and Lilia sit in the stands, and Lilia wonders why Jorg now looks monstrous, while her dad can tell something is seriously wrong. Right then, Rod notices the sword in Jorg's hand and yells to stay away from him at all costs because that blade has a powerful demon sealed inside it. The demon is surprised because it did not expect anyone to recognize the sword so quickly. It is clear it has already taken full control of Jorg's body. The legend says the blade the sword god used to kill the demon was cursed with a grudge, so the demon's soul now lives inside that blade. Even so, that sword was supposed to be sealed away in the royal vault. So Rod cannot grasp how Jorg ever got his hands on it. The demon says it was only a matter of time before some ignorant fool came searching for power and broke the seal to set it free. That fool turned out to be Jorg, and now the demon Gelda declares he will wreak havoc across the world. Even so, no one understands why he chose to sit tight and wait for the tournament to begin before showing himself if his only goal is to destroy everything. Rhiannon cannot believe Gelda is actually here, since she learned in history class that an evil deity summoned this demon in ancient times to burn the world down, and most people treated that story as nothing more than a myth. Suddenly, the crowd realizes this is not a stunt, and panic erupts. People surge for the exit screaming, and Gelda drinks in the shrieks with twisted delight. Even so, before anyone reaches the gates, Gelda throws up a barrier that seals the entire arena, trapping every soul inside. No matter how hard they push, no one can break through, and Gelda says he will take his time and butcher them at his leisure. Right then, he notices Errol squared up and ready to fight. Gelda finds it amusing that a rat would raise his blade instead of begging for mercy. Errol answers that he is confident he can win. After all, long ago a sword god defeated Gelda, so the demon is not invincible. Gelda admits that part is true, since a sword god did strike him down in the past. But based on Jorg's memories, there is no living sword god right now, which means there is no one around to stop him. Errol tells Gelda he just got two things wrong. First, there is at least one sword god still alive in this world. Second, even though Errol is not a sword god himself, he is still certain he can beat Gelda straight up. Gelda bursts out laughing and calls Errol delusional. Yet the humor dies fast when Errol snaps into divine step, erases the gap, and almost takes Gelda's head off in a single pass. Gelda stares in disbelief, since only a sword god should have that technique, and demands to know how Errol acquired it. But Errol isn't interested in talking, so he launches back into the offensive, driving strike after strike into Gelda. That's when Gelda's mouth curls into a smirk, as he remembers he now rides in the body of a sword emperor, so every swing he throws lands with terrifying force. He leaps high and hammers a direct hit into Errol's shoulder. Dust billows across the arena, and when it settles, Errol stands there perfectly fine. Gelda cannot process how a kid shrugs off a blow that heavy. Errol just says his training for the guts skill is finally paying off, and suddenly Gelda starts to get nervous because nothing he throws is working, and at this pace it is only a matter of time before he goes down. Suddenly Errol fires off the infinite break skill, hammering Gelda with hundreds of strikes in a single second. The final blow sends him flying before he crashes to the ground, unconscious, as Errol stands victorious. Jorg's body sits totally unprotected now, and Errol is confident Gelda should not be able to attack anymore, so he turns his back and starts walking away. At that moment Gelda is spitting every curse in his head because he refuses to be sealed again. Even so, he knows there is no way he can beat Errol head-on, so he figures his best move now is to get away from Errol as fast as he can. To pull that off, he needs a new host strong enough to escape, and for a moment he considers Ryunur, but Errol is standing too close to her. So instead, he sets his sights on Rod. All at once, Errol notices the demon sword rip free from Jorg's hand and streak toward the stands, jumps in front of Ryunur, and the blade explodes upward on impact. Suddenly, as the smoke clears, Gelda appears inside Rod's body with his sword pressed against Lilia's neck, shouting at Errol to let him go or his fiancée will die. Errol answers flatly that he was never engaged to Lilia, and Gelda calls it a bluff since he can read Rod's memories and remembers every time Lilia told her father she would make Errol her husband. Errol suddenly does not feel like rescuing Lilia at all, so he squares up to strike anyway. Ryunur tells him to hold it because Lilia is still their friend. Errol says there is no real reason to panic since he does not think Gelda can hurt Lilia in the first place. Gelda takes that as a dare and moves to slice Lilia's throat to prove how heartless he is. Yet his arms refuse to move. Rod is still awake inside, and there is no way he lets his own hands murder his daughter, so he starts fighting back, forcing Gelda out of his body. In a panic, Gelda offers Rod the power to regain his former glory if he just gives in, and not too long ago, Rod might have actually accepted that deal. Thanks to Errol, he understands now that with enough hard work, anything can change, so he no longer needs Gelda's power. Rod takes back control, hurls the sword toward Errol, and Errol meets it in the air, slicing it into pieces with ease as the crowd erupts in cheers, amazed at how effortlessly he defeated Gelda. A few days had passed since that horrific incident, and surprisingly, it ended up helping Lilia's guild. Ever since Errol won the Sword God Cup, word spread that Dragonfang was set on reclaiming its old place as the strongest guild in the city. Hearing that, a flood of eager young swordsmen signed up, all expecting lessons from the Sword God Cup champion, Errol himself. But unfortunately for them, they found a mentor far more seasoned and far stricter than Errol in the form of Rod, who changed after the last incident and regained his confidence. He begins drilling the new members relentlessly with the same fire he had before. Meanwhile, one of the newcomers slips behind the wall to hide, but Lilia notices and walks straight over to confront him. She states that they accepted him into the guild only because he vowed to give everything and train with full dedication. The recruit feels hopeless, mumbling that he never imagined Rod himself would be the one to put them through such a brutal regimen. He then asks Lilia if Errol will train them as well, but Lilia lets out an exasperated sigh, saying that Errol dropped out of the guild after winning the Sword God Cup. She laments that even Ryunur went after him hoping to stop him. At the same time, Errol is already in the forest, riding in the cart of the same adventurer who first brought him to this city. The driver is surprised to see Errol leave Brescia so quickly, especially after winning the Sword God Cup, a feat that practically turned him into a celebrity. Errol answers calmly that since he won the Sword God Cup, which is meant to be the contest of the strongest swordsman, he has already beaten the best Brescia could offer, so he has no reason to remain here any longer. The driver is confused, since there is still plenty of appeal in the city of swordsmen, especially when you hold the title of the strongest in town. But Errol refuses to stagnate in a place that can no longer challenge him. The driver stays puzzled, but Errol explains that he wants to find out whether he can now defeat his own mother in a sparring match. After a short while, he reaches his village and tries to slip into his house quietly to surprise his mother, who is out picking flowers. But his mother is far too seasoned and senses him at once, calling his name. Errol smiles, knowing he was caught by the world's strongest fighter and not by some talentless woman. His mother turns around and gives him a long measuring, saying he seems to have put a fair bit of experience under his belt now. Errol replies that he managed to win the Sword God Cup, and his mother looks genuinely delighted at that, saying they now have 2 people in the family who have won that competition. Errol smiles at the praise, but in the blink of an eye his mother vanishes and reappears right in front of him, holding a flower up to his face, asking whether it smells good. Errol is stunned by that sudden burst of speed, realizing he would have been finished if that flower had been a sword. He looks at her and says she saw straight through him and already knows the real reason he came back here. His mother chuckles softly, saying she would not be his mother if she could not read what he wanted just from the look in his eyes. She tells him that if they spar here they will end up wrecking the entire house and proposes having their match at the training ground behind the mountains. The scene shifts to them face to face with swords in hand. She smiles softly, curious to see how strong her son has become and how much he has changed since their last fight. But Errol warns her not to take him lightly since he has improved a lot since the last time they stood across from each other on the training field. His mother simply smiles and in an instant appears before him and strikes with her sword. Errol manages to block the blow, sparks spraying around as he braces to hold her back. She says she does not want him thinking she is not taking this seriously. Errol tunes out her words, knowing that even a moment of distraction could be disastrous for him. Knowing her patterns from training, he goes on the offensive, determined to win against her. Then he sidesteps her sword before leaping into the air and using Divine Slash and Twin Air Slices together at her. His mother parries with ease and asks whether he used the 2 skills at the same time. Errol says he did and asks what kind of skill she used to stop his attacks, which confuses her as she says she simply swung her sword and nothing else. Errol is shocked, realizing his attacks are easy enough for her to handle that she does not even need to use any skills to deal with them. They keep crashing into each other, sending heavy shock waves that scare the village residents, who wonder whether 2 monsters are trading blows in the forest. Errol keeps pressing the attack, using aerial leap to jump through the air to reach her, but she repels him and they both drop back to the ground. His mother smiles and says it is time to go all out as she releases her sword's divine power. Errol follows suit, and their blades collide once more. Over in the village, Rioner arrives to find it almost empty, then heads to Errol's house to see if he is back. The door swings open to his younger sister Mira, who is clearly unhappy about a stranger asking for her brother. With a smug grin, she calls Rioner a milk cow and says they do not need any extra milk today, trying to slam the door. But just then, Errol and his mother return, both bruised and battered from their sparring. He is surprised to see Rioner in the village and says he was in the forest having a sparring match with his mother. His mother looks proud and says Errol has grown much stronger and even defeated her today. Errol smiles and says they were evenly matched, and he managed to win purely through strength and nothing else. Rioner stays stunned, since his mother is an actual mythical sword god. Errol says she would have finished him easily if she were at her prime. Even in this worn state after leaving training years ago, she was still the toughest opponent he has ever faced. They head inside and sit to talk over some cake, and his mother is keen to know how Errol came to know this pretty young lady. Errol says they used to live together in the city, which puts a sparkle in his mother's eyes as she wonders if this is the one. Rioner clarifies at once that they were in the same guild and nothing more. After that, she remembers why she came and asks Errol why he left the guild so abruptly. He explains that he already left a letter of resignation, but Rioner doesn't let it go, saying he should have at least talked to them and said goodbye before leaving. Errol just shrugs, saying there was no competition left in the city anyway, so staying made no sense. His mother asks if Rioner came all this way because she was worried about Errol. Rioner refuses and says she actually came to become a student of his mother, so she can learn all the techniques she has to offer. Errol's mother answers by asking whether she wants to learn how to become a good housewife for Errol. Before Rioner can argue further, a voice very familiar to her calls from the front yard, where Evans, Rioner's father, calls out to Errol's mother and says they need to leave for the forest immediately, since insanely strong monsters were there not long ago and have destroyed half the forest. Farah thinks fast and says she and Errol already went there and dealt with the monster, and it will not trouble them any further. Evans is relieved and says he will inform the village that there is no need for an evacuation right now. He notices his own daughter Rioner, and says she is looking more and more like her mother every single day. Then he asks why she is here, but before Rioner can reply, Errol's mother cuts in and says Rioner wants to learn how to become a good wife. Rioner argues that she just wants to be a good swordsman, and Errol's mom tells her not to worry, since she will teach both swordsmanship and wifely duties. With that out of the way, Errol goes upstairs to his father's study and finds him bent over his desk with a spread of magical symbols. He greets Errol and says he is on the verge of a breakthrough that might become his ultimate technique, but Errol doesn't seem interested and tells him he has finally defeated his mother and now wants to learn magic instead. Hearing that, his father congratulates him for defeating the sword god, but calmly adds that it's still impossible for him to learn magic. Back in the kitchen, his mother hands Rhaenyra a knife to show her how to chop some vegetables. Rhaenyra completely obliterates the cabbage and the table in one swing, so I quietly prayed she'd stop before reaching the cucumbers. Errol's mom and sister just stand there in shock, and the poor woman starts wondering if cooking was ever a good idea in the first place. A little while later, Errol and his father repair the table, and once they're done, his father demonstrates his magic by fixing a broken mug. As they return the tools to the shed, he reminds Errol again to stop trying to use magic, insisting it's impossible for him. He explains that with swords, Errol could train every day and keep improving, and the pile of broken blades in the shed stands as proof of his effort. But trying to learn magic without a mana pool is like trying to hold a sword without fingers. It simply can't be done. Errol turns to him and asks how he's so sure that he doesn't have any mana. His father answers that if Errol had any, he would have received a class long ago. That's when Errol explains how while training with Rhaenyra in Brescia, he once used up all the holy water the guild had, which angered Lilia, who complained their debts were already bad enough and his holy water obsession was making things worse. So she threw him a bunch of mana recovery potions instead and told him to drink those. Ever since that day, Errol says he's been able to feel a faint flow of mana inside his body. His father's curiosity sparks immediately, and he decides to test it himself. He guides Errol to release a bit of mana into his palm, and to his surprise, Errol manages to do it, but then collapses unconscious. When Errol wakes up, he asks what he should do to learn magic now. His father tells him his mana pool is smaller than that of a newborn baby, so the only way to expand it is through daily training. Since training is what Errol excels at, he starts buying mana potions and works on it every single day. And after 6 long months, he finally builds enough mana to be considered a complete beginner with a weak pool. Seeing his progress, his father can't hide his excitement and tells him to enroll at the Magic Academy where he himself once studied. He takes out an old parchment filled with spell formulas and explains that Errol will have to learn them if he wants to cast any real magic. And hearing that, Errol's mind starts racing with new possibilities about studying at the very place that made his father one of the best wizards in the country. That evening, the family sits down for dinner, and Errol's mother happily mentions how Rhaenyra is improving in both housework and swordsmanship, while his father adds with pride that Errol is now walking the path of a wizard, opening a whole new future ahead of him. 3 years have passed since then, and Rhaenyra has been training every day with Errol's mom to become both a better swordsman and a better housewife. That morning, Errol's mom gave her the task of preparing the morning tea, which stressed her out at first, but she quickly got to work and finally served it with trembling hands. She waited anxiously while Errol's mom took a sip, tasted it for a moment, then said she had done a great job and the tea was exactly right. Rhaenyra felt happier than she ever expected. Her little moment of joy was cut short by a cry from upstairs. It was Errol's younger sister Mira, shouting that when she went to wake Errol up, he was gone and only left a note behind. Both Rhaenyra and Errol's mom read it, and it contained just one line saying he was heading to Arsel, the city of magic, for training. His mom grew sad, thinking he could have at least said goodbye, while Mira kept crying. Rhaenyra realized then how her own reckless actions years ago must have affected her family when she left for the Sword City Brescia. Errol's mom immediately told Rhaenyra she didn't want her leaving like that. Rhaenyra assured her she would never do such a thing and still had a lot to learn from her. Errol's mom thought about how her oldest daughter had once left home and now Errol was gone again, wondering when she would get to see them both. At the same time, Errol was already outside the village, traveling with the same knight, apparently the only guy the anime's director ever hired for transport duty, who looked surprised to see him again. As they talked, the man said Errol was really strange. He went to the city of Brescia, achieved incredible feats of strength and skill, then left all the fame and fortune behind to return to a village that barely anyone even knew existed. Now, after disappearing for 3 whole years, he was heading to Arsel, the city of magic. Errol said he wanted to try his luck in the examination and see how he measured up against the others. At that moment, a boy named Kaido asks Errol if he is also heading to the Magic Academy entrance exam, saying it is strange since Errol looks much older than the usual candidates. Before Errol can answer, a girl named Kufa cuts him off and scolds him for making fun of people, saying it is obvious Errol has just been failing the exam for years. Before Errol can explain that this is actually his first time going to that city, Kufa tells him it is admirable to see weak people trying to overcome their limits. The red-haired boy and the blue-haired girl start bickering right away, while the green-haired girl, Colette, tries to calm them down but completely fails. The red-haired boy turns back toward Errol and asks what kind of magic he specializes in, proudly saying that he uses red magic. Errol starts thinking back to when his father taught him about the various types of magical affinities. Black stands for dark magic, white for light, yellow for earth, green for wind, blue for water, and red for fire. But since Errol had no natural affinity, his father made him practice every kind of magic he could. Snapping back to the moment, Errol tells the boy that he does not really know what magic he can use since he does not have a class. The boy looks surprised, but the blue-haired girl scoffs and calls him a loser, saying he must be joking since no classless person could ever dream of taking the Magic Academy exams. The red-haired boy spins back toward Errol, furious, and tells him to quit making fun of them. Errol says he is not and shows them his class card, which clearly proves that he is classless. The young candidates stare wide-eyed, saying he will never be able to pass the exams. But before Errol can respond, a thunderous roar echoes from the forest, shaking the trees around them. Errol immediately recognizes it and says it must be a troll king awakening from a long sleep. The boy panics, yelling that they need to run because the troll king is insanely strong, and the blue-haired girl shouts at the damn driver to move fast. The driver turns in horror and says the roar scared his horses so badly they have already fainted. The blue-haired girl realizes there is no escape, so they will have to fight. She quickly lays out a plan, telling the red-haired boy and the green-haired girl that even though it is a troll, if they work together, they can bring it down. But their confidence crumbles when the Troll King finally steps out of the forest, towering over them with a massive club in hand. The red-haired boy tries to calm the girls down, saying that even though it is huge, they just need to stay focused and find a way to beat it. Before they can act, the troll lets out another earth-shaking roar that rattles the ground beneath them. The girls drop to their knees, trembling and clutching each other, realizing their magic will not be enough to stop the beast. The red-haired boy keeps his cool, trying so hard to look fearless that even the troll seems a little confused. He jumps out of the cab, steadies himself, then draws his magic wand and gathers all his mana before launching a fireball straight at the troll's face. For a brief moment, they think they might stand a chance, but when the smoke clears, the troll steps forward completely unharmed and angrier than before. The boy used every bit of mana in that spell, leaving him with nothing to defend himself or even run away. The troll charges toward him, but suddenly a massive explosion engulfs the area and turns the monster into ashes. Everyone stares in shock as Errol steps out from behind, saying he might have overdone it a bit. The boy is stunned, and the girls whisper among themselves that explosion magic is an extremely advanced type of spell used only by the strongest mages. Errol ignores the chatter and goes to the horses, casting a healing spell to wake them back up. When he turns around, he finds the red-haired boy on his knees begging for forgiveness and asking Errol to take him as his master so he can become a great wizard one day. Errol tries to tell them they have it wrong and that he is not a master, only an examinee. He shows them his class card again, but the green-haired girl insists that he must be a great mage hiding his identity with a fake card. Seeing that he cannot change their minds, Errol decides to continue on his way toward the city of Arsal. A couple of days later, they arrive early in the morning. The city lies between a large lake, surrounded by drawbridges on all sides that control who enters and leaves. Once inside, the boy tells Errol he must be taking the exam for red magic, meaning they will be together, while the green-haired and blue-haired girls will take the earth and water exams. That is when Errol learns the courses and tests are divided according to magical affinities, and he quietly hopes they will not reject him like they did back in Brescia for being classless. To his surprise, when he reaches the reception desk, the receptionist smiles, stamps his card, and gives him his roll number. Errol asks if it is really fine even though he has no class, and the receptionist replies that everyone has the right to take the exam and no one will be treated unfairly. He realizes this place is completely different from Brescia and moves toward the testing grounds. There, he sees several students lined up as one of them fires a small fireball at a metal knight and passes the test. Before he can figure out what his own task will be, a blonde boy steps into the arena and asks the instructor if it is fine to destroy one of the metallic dolls. The instructor looks confused at first, then checks the boy's card and realizes he is an advanced magic user, a class so rare that everyone nearby goes silent. The crowd watches as the boy walks forward and casts a spell that summons a towering pillar of flame, completely engulfing the metallic knight. The boy looks proud of his display, but the red-haired boy blurts out that his Errol could do even better. The cocky boy turns sharply toward him and asks if he really thinks some random man could surpass an advanced magic user. The red-haired boy fires back, saying his Errol could roast him so badly even the troll would feel second-hand embarrassment. The arrogant boy scoffs, claiming those are empty words and no one could match his power or melt metal like he did. Errol finally cuts in, calmly pointing out that the knight has not melted at all. The instructor steps closer and explains that the knights are made of mythal, one of the toughest metals in existence, so it will not break or melt that easily. The red-haired boy mocks the arrogant brat again, dragging Errol into it by saying he would do far better. Errol smacks him lightly on the head, then steps forward into the arena. He decides to use the same spell the other boy cast, which already shocks everyone watching. The explosion that follows looks far less dramatic, just a narrow column of fire that seems weak and does no visible damage. The cocky boy bursts out laughing, but his laughter dies fast when the metallic knight suddenly slumps and melts into a pool of glowing liquid metal. The boy stares in disbelief, saying eruption magic should never be able to melt mythal. Errol replies that he used a modified version of that spell by focusing all the flames into one concentrated column, creating heat stronger than any normal eruption magic. Without saying more, Errol walks out of the arena and enters the blue magic section, where the blue-haired girl has just passed her test by hitting the target. She looks shocked to see him there, but Errol wastes no time, unleashing an ice edge strike that shatters the knight before heading toward the green magic arena, leaving the instructors and students speechless. Just outside, he spots the green-haired girl standing nervously, saying she has not registered yet because she is too scared. He gives her a short pep talk, boosting her confidence before walking her through the registration and guiding her toward the arena. The test for the green division is simple. They only have to produce a basic wind spell strong enough to spin the windmill in front of them. In true overkill fashion, Errol casts a tornado that tears the entire windmill apart, shredding it into pieces and leaving the instructor completely stunned. The green-haired girl steps up next, clearly nervous again, but Errol gives her another quick pep talk and nudges her forward. Thanks to that push, she manages to focus and passes her test as well. After that, Errol easily clears both the light magic and the yellow magic schools before heading toward the dark magic section. From the outside, it looks abandoned, not a single person in sight, until he suddenly hears a strange sound coming from a nearby box. He walks over to check it, but before he can lift the lid, a woman runs up crying that she has lost her pet and asks if he has seen it. Errol points toward the box, saying something is inside, and the woman immediately digs through it, pulling out a bizarre toad-like creature that looks straight out of a nightmare. She beams with pride and tells Errol she created the chimera herself, asking if he thinks it is cute. Errol forces an awkward smile, then suddenly gets startled by a skeleton appearing behind him. His instincts kick in, and he decapitates it with one swing of his wand. The skeleton scrambles to pick up its head, then tells him to relax, saying she is not a monster, but a beautiful office clerk, introducing herself as Latalia. Errol then asks where he can find the examination hall, and she explains that the dark magic school is open to everyone since they rarely get new students. With that, Errol successfully enrolls in all 6 schools. When he steps outside, the red-haired boy and the girls rush over and start arguing over which school Errol will be joining since he passed their tests too. Errol stuns them all by revealing that he cleared every single exam and plans to learn all 6 magical affinities from this point on. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed this recap, please hit the like button and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or tweaks, share them in the comments. They help me improve.